Been in business a long time. Most of my career spent in agriculture, uh, but I also have a consulting business and I'm involved in a couple of startup companies. So quite a diverse range of things these days. Been involved in some big companies in the past, most of them in manufacturing and natural resource industries, but also spent some time in venture capital. So I don't know how much you want me to go into it, Tate, but happy to dialogue on just about any subject. I can pretend be a general most days. So uh, thanks for inviting me. Let me know if there's any specific things you want me to jump
Yeah, for sure. Thank you, Ben. That's great. I'm sure we'll dive into more specific questions. Lyle, would you like to go next?
Sure. My name's Lyle Angus, and I'm a U of R graduate, so not from the U of S, but also from engineering. I've been in various businesses for about 20 years, mostly in manufacturing and the corrugated container industry, egg chem industry, commercial glass industry, and now most recently with Federated Cooperatives as an operations manager with the Facilities and Design and Development Department in Regina. So, like I say, almost all my experience has been in manufacturing at various levels, from superintendent at the floor level to area operations.
Yeah. Thank you, Lyle. And I think both of you will have lots of good input for our students from the hardware sector and potentially agriculture sector. And Neil is from a different software sector. I think that'll give a different perspective. Neil, would you like to tell us more about you and your company?
Sure. My name is Neil Anderson. I'm also an engineer. I graduated from the College of Electrical Engineering, U of S, way back when the Earth was green, back in 1990. Spent the bulk of my career focusing on control system design and process optimizations of control systems and of different industries around the province for those 30 years. I started a software company 5 years ago in Saskatoon, and our development team is here at the University of Saskatchewan on Research Drive that deals with athlete evaluation optimization. So it kind of ties in with my optimization background.
Yeah, thank you, Neil. So this is a panel with a lot of experience and in different industry, and the fact you are all engineers will, I think, help our students understand how to approach different industries better. So I think how I would like to go is I send you some questions before. Maybe let's go through this, and then we have some students have some questions from previous session. I think I'll open the floor to them so then they can ask the panelists for that. So one of the first thing I was thinking is, can you each talk about a little bit about your industry? Are you business to business? Are you business to customer? And how that industry works in terms of sales and how that works. Can we go through the similar order? Like maybe Ben want to take that first.
in. Sure. So most of my activity these days is, I think, more business to business, even though a lot of it is small business or companies that are single owner decision makers. So one of the main things I'm working on these days is a startup egg machinery company. So we designed and developed a proprietary farm implement and selling it to farmers. So the way that works is we focus more on development, design, and manufacturing, and then the distribution and sales activity occurs through dealers and or sometimes directly to farmers. Farmers are really that single business decision maker. but they are business people. But it is a little bit of a crossover between that business to business and retail thinking. And of course, they expect a lot, not only in the performance of the product, but then service and support, access to parts, knowledge, training, things like that. So the simple summary would be in the agriculture industry anyway, we have to develop a product, get it manufactured, get it distributed through dealers, and then support it afterwards. Some of the other industries where I'm working in as well as an advisor or consultant would be more in heavy industry, machinery used in construction and the general contractor industry. So that's larger clients usually that are big sophisticated companies, and they're making buying decisions off of usually a fairly drawn out process of evaluating the cost benefit of a purchase. So anyway, I'll stop there, but that's kind of more my realm. Less so, I do have a little bit of experience in more retail consumer driven products, but my current activities are more focused on that areas I mentioned.
Mhm. Yeah. Thank you, Ben. That's really good. We actually have some students in the more business to business level, and they're struggling. Ryan, would you like to tell us a bit more about your industry?
Sure. Similarly, FCL is really a wholesaler on behalf of about 160 retail cooperative associations across Western Canada. So we're really a business to business organization. I'm not, the department I work in is really focused on certain aspects of that, but as a company, we obviously provide services to retails in terms of procurement of goods for their resale. The area I'm focused in more is on goods for own use aspects, where we support retail operations, their needs either from breadths of things from project management services to equipment manufacturing to operational support to parts and service through our department. So similarly, again, it's that business to business, but in some ways, the way we deal with our retail members, retail cooperative members, is often a business to consumer style, right? The cooperative model is a little bit different in how it's integrated. It's more that bottom up than it is top down driven. So our retails or our customers are independent. They have a choice of where to go, and we have to be able to work with them to ensure that we're providing value so that the services that we do offer is valued and they want them. So.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Neil, can you talk a bit about your industry?
For sure. So my company is also business to business, and it's described as a SaaS model. So it's a software as a service. So our development team has made a software application that's used by sport organizations around the globe, and we sell athlete licenses to different sporting organizations, training academies. Some of our larger customers or notable customers, I guess, would be groups like the Tampa Bay Lightning, the CFL Referees Association, Tennis Canada, quite a few organizations around the world. We're used for every sport. Essentially, how we came about was realized 5 years ago, speaking as a coach, that there was a need to get rid of pen and paper processes when evaluating athletes. So instead of using pen and paper, we do it now on a mobile app and instantly can send reports back to the athletes for the first time in their athletic careers, because normally they don't get any feedback. Typically they just get told in 3 weeks what team they're playing on and told have a good season. So we optimize two key things. We save sporting organizations a huge amount of data entry time, and two, we provide better feedback to the athletes than they've ever had before in their young careers.
Yeah, thank you, Neil. So I think like it's quite fair to say like all three of you are dealing with a more business to business type of sector, but there is a component of the complexity of your customer, because the people who are actually benefiting from your service may be the person who make the buying decision, but may not be. So there's something there too. So can you going into that a little bit more? Who are your customers and how you engage with them? Because one of the things the question come from the previous section. A lot of engineers said they don't know where to start. They don't know how to engage with them. Can you share some experience on that? Maybe this can be and whoever raised their hand first, so I want to take that.
Yeah, I'll go first if that's all right. Then, currently the business model we're in is again a bit unique in that we don't go out to canvas customers beyond that retail market, right? So we're not going out to look for additional customers beyond that current base we have. So we have to engage within a certain sphere of customers, and we work through a lot of our internal meetings with some of our retails and engage them on our own through our retail offices in terms of the services and support we're able to provide. So most of ours is internal, but the difference is it's a captured market, but not one that we are given, I guess, if you're going to look at it that way. We have to earn it, because they still have a choice to go out and buy those services and goods through someone else if they so choose, if we're not able to provide value. So we're kind of restricted in that way. Like I say, if I lose a customer, I can't just go find one somewhere else. We have to work within that existing base. So that would be one of the differences for us as an organization.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you.
I can go next if you want. Our customers are youth sport organizations, training academies, training facilities, and scouting orgs around the globe that evaluate athletes on a regular basis.
Yeah. Can I ask a follow-up question there, Neil? Why do you decide to target them rather than individual parents whose kids are playing sports?
Well, it kind of touches a little bit on what Lyle just mentioned. It's about who the decision maker is. So if you think about any kid that's going out to get evaluated, it's not the parent or the kid that decides how they get evaluated. It's done by the sporting organization that's running the show and collecting the registration fees and telling the kids where to be.
Yeah, so actually having an understanding who actually make that decision helps you position yourself well.
That's a pretty key pretty key necessary thing to know.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I can jump in too, Tate.
Yeah.
I think in my case, I specifically talk about farmer as a customer. The farmers are a pretty broad and diverse group of consumers. So they range from more small mom and pop type farms all the way up to big, giant, sophisticated commercial enterprises. And when you engage them, each type of customer segment does require a different strategy. They're not going to all respond in exactly the same way. So if you're going to talk to a larger corporate farm, they expect a certain type of engagement, more of a professional engagement, something with more numbers. A smaller farmer might be more interested in a demonstration and touch and feel. And when you're trying to determine what the farmers want, it's important to do a lot of research. And the only way to really do that is to talk to them and really surround yourself with almost like a panel of experts, a group that can give you a cross section of representative feedback. And if you don't have that properly structured, you're going to end up orienting your company around the opinions of a select number that may not represent the whole market. So that a term that's used a lot nowadays on product development and market research is the analytics that goes along with the market research. There is a lot of information that you can get from third-party research that's done on behalf of other companies. Sometimes you can access that. You can do surveys and you can do kind of more conventional research. It can get quite expensive. And a lot of times you have to avoid the anecdotal. Otherwise, you could end up just making a choice purely on 2 or 3 data points, and those aren't necessarily true. So I tend to really, as much as your gut instinct and your desire to go in a certain path might be exciting, I usually try to always step back and reset and say, what does the data say? And if you're remove your emotion and stick to true research, then your customer engagement can be far more efficient than if you just go purely on a hunch and then find out later that the market really wasn't what you thought it was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thanks, Ben. You mentioned something like quite key. I think in many ways is they have to be able to get enough data from customers directly. How many customers do you typically go to give you confidence?
Well, it depends on how you're evaluating the industry. When your transaction values are really high, you can usually move it to a smaller number of customers. If your total customer base is 50,000, let's say, and you're hoping to sell 200 transactions a year, you can probably safely talk to 50 of them to get a trend line. If your transactions are 10,000 a year and a smaller dollar amount, then you need a bigger pool to represent an accurate reflection of it. It's a bit like statistics. Your population, your sample size will determine your accuracy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thanks, Ben. Neil and Lau, would you like to also address that question a bit?
So I'll just kind of expand on what Ben was just talking about, getting samples. The thing you really probably need to be careful of when you're asking those sample people, let's say, are they interested in this new product that you might be coming down the pipe? It's more human nature for somebody, if they're not writing a check for $1 or not spending anything, they don't want to hurt your feelings 9 times out of 10, and they'll tell you, yeah, that sounds like a really good idea. It's really when you ask them, okay, how about you contribute or pay something to the development of it? That's where you really find out whether or not they think it's a good idea and whether or not they pony up if you spent the time and efforts to develop the product.
Yeah. So do you always ask them to contribute? How do you ask if you do?
Yeah. So there's a couple different cases. I'd say and if it's a feature that they really want us to develop for them, then we'll have them pay 20%, kind of down, and that goes towards their athlete subscriptions long term, anyways. But at least they're contributing something to the development of before we spend a second by one of our software developers to develop it. The other aspect we can get into is getting into long-term contracts, and we'll say, like in the case of Skillshark, we've actually increased our price 4 times over 4 years. So we'll get people to commit to a long-term contract saying, we keep making the software more powerful each and every year. How about you sign a long-term contract for these new features that are coming down the pipe so you can lock in at a lower rate long-term? And that's another way to see whether or not they're actually committed to you.
Yeah. So there's some skin in the game.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you, Neil. Lyle, would you like to contribute to that?
Yeah, I mean, that skin in the game applies for us too. And when we look at how we support some of our retail operations, we find the same sort of thing, right? If they don't have some sort of vested interest in that they contribute to, they're more likely, as Neil pointed out, to say, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. But how well are they going to adapt and take on, whatever we're trying to work with them? It certainly works much better when they have some involvement in it, and then they'll start to ask a lot more questions and make sure that this is going to match up and help us make sure we're providing the right product or service to them. We also do those survey type things, mostly on feedback, not so much on market development from our customers, just to see what they value, how we're doing, those types of surveys to sort of elicit what we, where we're positioned, and are we doing as well as we think we're doing, or what are we missing in terms of being able to provide what our customers are looking for.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, that's really good. I think all of that is giving a lot of context and then to our students. I'm going to move on to some of the questions on the list as well. So one of the questions come out before is actually like some students are really new to this process, and they haven't had a lot of experience with the industry they're thinking of, so they don't really know where to find the contact. So can you take a step back, either describe how people could approach your industry and find out some information now, or how you get into a new industry, and then can you cast some light to help them understand how they can get started? Would you like to go, Neil? I think like you went into a, I think Ben,
No, Neil, go ahead, Neil. No.
I was waiting to hear what Ben said. I was.
Okay, so I mean, it's a huge, broad topic, Tate. So
yeah,
that's why I left it.
I know. That's not that, but that really was one of the questions come up in the last session, and I decided I'm gonna leave that to you guys.
Yeah, well, look, if the question it could be more specifically, and I'll put words in your mouth. I'd like to start a business, but I'm not sure where to start and how to get a good idea going. And then once I do have an idea, how do I figure out how to prove that it's a good idea?
Yeah.
And
That's
so
a good way to say.
yeah, so the business starts usually with some sort of inspiration moment where it's, I found this brilliant solution, and then you go, wait, where's the problem? And then you massage your idea to make sure that it's viable, because lots of times, like, I don't know if anybody watches, say, Dragon's Den or Shark Tank. Those shows are epically good examples of how people will invent something and then they take it forward thinking it's amazing, and then the dragons just shoot them down because no one needs another toilet paper dispenser. Like there's a lot of things that you think you thought of something awesome and it's not. And then on other cases, they take a look at something and go, wow, that is actually quite brilliant. I can't believe someone hasn't thought of that already. But
Yeah.
a lot of it comes back to really there can be brilliant ideas that have just come up, creativity and inspiration that can suddenly spawn a new business. And in other cases, that's just the catalyst that gets somebody interested in business. And then 2 steps later, they find some different idea that is truly the one that is actually viable. But the first one literally just got them going. Gave them some training to do something viable.
Yeah.
Since I graduated from university, I probably, I've always tried to keep my ears open when you're listening to people in any conversation. You might be out having some drinks with some friends, and you hear the words, I wish they would come out with blank. And you kind of take note of, okay, what is that idea? And is it something, as Ben said, you might even have a solution for that. But is there a large enough market that enough people care about it? Who cares if you develop the best next toilet paper dispenser? It's irrelevant because people aren't passionate about it.
Yeah, thanks. That's really good points. I think, and then give some start, please. Yeah, Lyle.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I guess I'm less in a business that's on that more entrepreneurial side where you're looking for new business lines. We're more looking at providing solutions to our customers, but it's the same sort of process applies, right? What is that problem that's been identified, putting some scale into it, doing some analysis to determine, what that scope is, and then, going to do some research to determine if you can find a creative solution to be able to resolve that with your business partners.
Yeah, thanks. I hope that provides some context. You may still get some questions from our students later on. I'll move to another question, and then we'll open the floor up for students to ask some questions. So one of the things to consider is when you engage with customers, they have a different buying process, how they decide to buy your product. And I think that's something we don't teach students in engineering school. It's not part of engineering, but I think it should be. So could you describe the typical buying process for your customer from how you engage them to they actually make the decision, and then if there's any ongoing support? I think that'll provide some understanding to our students on that as well.
Sure. I can start. So a typical customer in our industry, the buying process would be that once they've identified that they want to make their evaluation process better for their athletes, they set up a demo with myself or one of the people on our marketing sales team and go through a demo of the software. They usually then they're doing that in advance of their actual evaluation season, so they're getting prepared a month or two in advance, and then when the time comes, they will pull the trigger and buy however many athlete licenses that they need. That's a typical buying process for us.
Okay. Yeah, thanks, Dan.
In my case, it's something that everybody could probably relate to is like if you have to buy a new television or computer, you go down to the store or you look online and you do your research and you kind of narrow it down. And then you start getting pricing, then you start getting a features list, and you start evaluating the various features with the various price options to get it down to the point where it's optimal, where you know exactly what you want. And if there are competing options, you usually benchmark those and say, well, this vendor's got this price, this one's got this price. If you want something that is like the only one company can offer it, and there isn't a way to get competing pricing, that's usually where there's patents or something proprietary. And maybe in Neil's case, I don't know if you have competitors, Neil, but a lot of times if you don't have competitors, the customer's evaluating you against its alternatives. If I don't buy this, what are my costs? If I buy this, now how am I saving money, or how am I making more money? Whereas if you're buying a consumer item or something that has a lot of competitors, you're evaluating a whole list of things like price point, features and benefits, warranty, return policy, aftermarket support, things like that. But if you're the only available option and your product is the only one in the market because it's new and maybe it has patents on it and no one else can copy it, then the customer is really making a decision based on if I don't buy this, what am I going to do? What is my business going to do? Or what's my life going to be like if I don't have this in it? And then they cost that out. If they're very sophisticated, they might have a spreadsheet and a model that will help them determine it.
Yeah.
And if they're less minded that way, they may just simply make a more of a gut decision and say, I want this, I'm willing to pay for it.
Yeah, thanks for that.
Yeah. And maybe I'll spin this around a little bit from my perspective and put the hat of the customer on, because that's one of our roles, corporately within FCL, is to be the purchaser for our customers to be able to provide them good or service. So, to sort of echo what Ben says, that's our process. Is when we identify whatever that product or service is, then we'll go to market and we'll run procurement sourcing activities to look for that competitive advantage, to create that competitive edge, I guess, with either our incumbents or in new situations. And with that mindset of more than just the lowest cost, how do we get that best value, and whatever that value is defined for our end customer. And it could be that aftermarket support, it could be warranty, it could be technical support, it could be training, some of those soft things that certainly provide value more than just the low cost bottom line.
Okay. Yeah, thank you a lot. That's a really good point, because in some ways, especially for entrepreneurs, your job doesn't end with sell the product. There's a whole aspect of service and support actually creates a lot of value, and then will be important. So with that, I think right now I'm going to open the floor to the students. I have more questions for you. I would like to keep this going, but I think if any students you have a question, please unmute yourself, introduce yourself, and ask your question to our panelists.
Oh, hi. My name is Gang Lee. I'm working similarly on a project which is similar to Neil Anderson's company. It's a software as a service. So I provide software as a service to provide some engineering solution. So you just mentioned their buying process is let you set up a demo, then compare, then they do the evaluation to pick the right one. So my question is, how do you even get to that point? I mean, when they ask you to set up a demo, when they get several competitors and evaluate them, that means they are really buying your concept. So even before that, maybe like you mentioned, for those athlete teams, they may have their traditional way to do stuff. They have a pen and paper solution. So how do you get to the first step that they accept a software as a service solution, then that will further allow you to enter the competition?
Yeah. So good question. Okay. So we happen to be, I guess you could call it, fortunate enough that we entered a pretty greenfield space where there was zero competition. There were three companies that we all started around the same time, around 5 to 6 years ago. So we're following and are subject to something called the technology adoption curve. So basically it involves educating the market is pretty much our primary where our primary effort is spent, because many people don't even know that there's a solution for what we provide yet. So on this technology adoption curve, it's kind of an S curve, that the very first people to find you are those people who are early adopters and innovators. So they have the foresight to say, hey, there must be a solution for this. So they're the ones out there to begin with looking, hey, I wonder if there's a software solution that handles this. And right now, we're also pretty fortunate enough that we do a pretty good job on SEO on our website to appear near the top of those searches when the time comes. So a lot of research went into identifying those typical customer personas that we have, and we've this is getting into another thing, but we've set up customer personas. There are 3 basic personas that our customers would fall into. We call them the Bobs, the Brads, and the Jasons. Based on those criteria of what we believe our typical customers are, we know or have a good idea what search terms they're going to be looking for when they go to Google. So we pay Google AdWords money to show up on the top of those search requests, and yeah, that's how we get them to our website, and they book a demo and spend some time getting to know our product. Does that answer your question?
Yes, that answers my question. So, and just a quick question, very quick. So for that demo, do you like how to price the demo? Is like a free demo, or because it costs you a resource? How did you price it?
It's like when you're a software tech startup company, you are all about doing those extra efforts to plant those seeds of geography everywhere you can get them, and that might mean burning the midnight oil and putting in a lot of hard work, but you do everything to plant every seed you possibly can to prime the pump of your company engine. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, there are questions from our students.
Yeah, I'll ask a quick question, kind of again to Neil. Hey, Neil, it's Nelson here. Nice to see you on the other end of the table. Um, yeah, no, my question is kind of in that education space. I mean, you kind of know where we're at with our company. And I'm kind of wondering, like, when you're doing a demo, like someone who is like, yeah, we'd like to kind of know more about our athletes or, this information, still learning about it for the first time. How are you getting back into that education space before doing a demo? Like, this is what you're looking for. Let's kind of rephrase this in a way that we solve this problem and what we address. Now let's do that demo. Kind of that how can I say that discovery call?
Yeah. So, well, I guess in our case, because my background, I played competitive sports. Like I played men's fastball when I was 11 years old, and played competitive softball until my knees couldn't take it anymore, and then I coached for 15 years. So I am a Bob. So I'm the typical use case, and I have a pretty good understanding about what questions they're going to ask, and I can also speak in terms that they understand. So educating the other people in Skillshark to do the demos in a similar way, I think has helped us a lot. So probably just to answer your question more further is just, yeah, it's just understanding the use case pretty intimately myself.
Kind of, if you don't mind me jumping back in, kind of like so in our case, like a lot of it is people kind of have the idea and then they kind of find a solution, um but there's a better way to solve that same problem of what you're looking for. So in certain cases, for some people it's like tracking on the shop floor.
Right.
It's very common industry for people to jump to barcode scanners. Why barcode scanning? I don't really know. But it's something that's been adopted since like the mid 2000s. So when people call us, they're like, we know this problem, we agree on the problem, but I came in with the idea that maybe you guys would have something in barcode scanning, etc. How do you kind of level that playing field and say, no, this is a different technology to combat the same problem? We both are educated on what needs to be solved, but let's kind of reframe the discussion around like, this is our method of solving it?
I think, yeah, we've never really had that case. Like our biggest competitor is pen and paper. Still, 99% of sports organizations use it, and eventually, I would say in 5 to 6 years' time, no one will be using pen and paper, or very, very few, to do their evaluations, just because of the technology adoption that you typically see out there. But so in our case, we don't really have alternate solutions or people approaching the problem differently. We have very similar type solutions to what we do. We just focus heavily on the user interface and user experience and marketing of our product to help differentiate ourselves relative to the competition.
Yeah, no, that definitely helps. Thank you.
I have a question. My name is Jay, and this is a question for Ben. So I know you mentioned that you were or are a venture capitalist. So when people present ideas to you, what are a few things that you look for? Do you focus mostly on the product or business or financials, or do you like investing in kind of high growth, rapid user increase businesses, or kind of what's the biggest thing you look forward to when deciding whether to invest in a business or not?
Oh boy. I guess it comes down to about 3 or 4 key things. First would be, do I think that the product is innovative and different enough that it will generate some significant return on investment? Um, Sometimes a business can be, um, depending on the stage it's at, still very, very early. So there's no proof or evidence to support it. So you're leaning on expertise that can help you evaluate it and make a determination of, well, how long will it take for this business to get off the ground till the point where it's generating revenue? For example, you also want to look at, is the industry or the type of product that this company is launching, is it in a growing space? So, here we are in the middle of a, and if you were to ask me a question a year ago, I might be saying, businesses that involve a lot of groups and gatherings and contact could be a great business. And then a few months later, not so much. Retail businesses right now are really suffering. So you can't always, no one has a crystal ball and always get it right. So venture investing comes that not every business is going to a bit of a characteristics coming back to a lot of say you invest in people as much as you invest in a product and the team. It's a lot. They put a lot of hours in this off the ground. So the product and the idea are important, but so too are the people and their capacity to get it done. Tate, are we getting some technical difficulties?
I think so. I think you were cutting in and out a bit. I think we heard you were saying the importance of, well, for one, like the type of business may change because of situation. And we heard you said the importance of teams, but in between there, something was cutting off.
Okay, I think you got most of it, but yeah, there's a lot of different criteria, and it does depend on the type of business. But two summary points would be the people that are behind the business are just as important as the idea and its potential.
Yeah.
So that helps.
Yeah. I think that and then the other thing is we do actually have a investor panel tomorrow. So that will address some other issues. But I actually, while I have you online, I should remember to invite you to the next investor panel next year. But one thing I want to actually take advantage while I have been now on the line is actually we have some students are in the hardware service, and I think there are two things we need to talk about. We haven't got a chance. So one thing is manufacturing, onshore, offshore. How do you price that? I know we're kind of like cutting close to the time, so I don't know if you want to address that. The other thing is actually unique to hardware business is also maybe more to Lyle is distribution and wholesale intermediary. How do you approach that? So manufacturing and wholesale. Could you briefly talk about that?
Sure. I'll talk about it from what we do to support our customers on that goods for own use scenario. So for us, it's making sure that we are inserting ourselves in that proper niche. So sort of that idea that Ben was talking about on venture capital is where can we add the value that's missing in the market compared to what our customers can just go out and do on their own. So we don't want to create a scenario for ourselves as a company where we force people to use this. We want to make sure that we're actually able to add value into that and fill those missing niches that don't really exist that they can't go get on their own. And so one of them for us is petroleum distribution or distribution of petroleum parts. There's not really a opportunity out there for anybody's doing that in any degree, and we can do that in a better scenario. So that's what we base some of our warehouse operations around, and then that's what we'll look for where there's situations that we supply parts or materials or service into retails. We can't do it better than what's out there for the competition, then we stay away from that, and then we just kind of work with those other groups to be able to leverage our purchasing power to provide that value through them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks a lot.
I'd say it's a fascinating situation right now, Tate, because and the pandemic is changing everything. Globalization is going through a real transformation. Countries are rethinking their supply chain strategies across the board. There's a great deal of concern about high dependency on international supply chains and the interruptions that are occurring due to the pandemic. And it's been very, very attractive to work on an offshore manufacturing supply chain for many years because of the cost benefits. But that's quickly being changed because of the delays or impacts that and automation is having just as big an effect on domestic manufacturing capacity and its cost effectiveness. So depending on how complicated the product is, if it's manufacturing electronics, Canada has some capacity, but is generally not the lowest cost supplier. That could change, and we could end up being a competitive global manufacturer of electronics, given that everybody else's costs are going up. I think the best thing to do is evaluate. Sorry, I have a dog in the background. Welcome to the video at home. I think that every company and every product line is going to have to be evaluated independently now. There's no rule of thumb anymore. It's a year ago, I would have said global supply chain is the way to go. You know, optimize your purchasing capacity, go to any country and get the best quality at the lowest cost. And always have 3 vendors and everything will be fine. And nowadays it's just not the same. I don't know how else to describe it, but you can have countries can decide overnight that they're no longer going to export because they believe they need it as a domestic priority. And that's allowed now. There's no WTO that's going to overrule that when it's a pandemic. All bets are off. And there's a good chance this is going to give a lot of countries excuses to create trade barriers and make it difficult to transact with. America, the European Union, a lot of places are going to really heighten their standards and use the pandemic as an excuse and make it more difficult for third countries to access those markets going forward. So, for example, if you want to sell to the European Union and some component in your product doesn't have a sustainability feature because it comes from a country that doesn't embrace that, you might be blocked from accessing the market. You know, combination of environmental standards and health and safety issues are going to be used as trade barriers going forward as opposed to it all being lowest cost. That's a longer topic, and I hope that helps answer it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know that's really good. Yeah. Oh, sorry, Neil, go ahead.
I was just going to say, anyone who's considering starting a startup company, whether hardware or software, a really good information source in Saskatoon, look into collabs. Nelson is on the call, is already very well aware of what collabs is because he's in it. In Regina, if there's anybody on the call from Regina, then Cultivator. But in those accelerators, you'll find hardware or software tech startup companies that will be a wealth of free advice for you to like the number of hardware companies in collabs, and you hear about all the complications that they get into relative to a software company. There's a lot of things you need to know before you walk into that arena.
Yeah, thanks, Neil. That's definitely like one of the places our students can bridge like to the next stage, and I hope many of you after this workshop will consider attend the co-launch as well. In many ways, is having a community can actually walk alongside of you. I cannot emphasize enough. It's really important. Like we said yesterday, the strength of the wolf is in the pack, right? So a lone wolf is not very dangerous. So we want you to form a good pack and move forward. I think this evening has been like really successful. I think there are a lot of really good questions and insights being provided. Thank you for like coming in. I have one last question before I let you go away. Is all 3 of you are engineering graduates, but you are doing some higher level of, and more complex work in some ways, and you're at a place where many of students are hoping to be in 5, 10 years, and maybe 20 years. Is there some advice, last words you want to give our students how to prepare themselves to taking on more leaderships from now?
That's a big question. Yeah.
Sorry, that's a curveball. I saved too
Bob,
long.
you look like you want to say something.
I can, very quickly, I'd say surround yourself with good mentors. People that have a lot of wisdom and experience are fantastic. I'll often get far more eerie if you buy them a beer or two or lunch. And don't be afraid to take some risks. And the younger you are when you take risks, the easier it is to bounce back. you wait till you're later in life, you get too conservative, and you want to protect what you have, and then you're not going to be the mistake. So do them when you're young and get some good mentors.
Yeah,
Well,
thanks, Ben.
I'll share some advice that I got from Brett Wilson for those Dragon's Den fans. So never underestimate the power of and how essential good marketing is. You might come up with the best mousetrap, but if you haven't thought about how much marketing effort it's going to take and cost of marketing it's going to take to let people know that that mousetrap is out there, then that's going to be a learning curve. The other thing is the importance of good user interface and user experience of your product. Nelson knows that as well as anybody. Incredibly, incredibly important.
Yeah, thanks, Neil.
Yeah, for me, it kind of goes along with some of the things Ben talked about, and that's just asking a lot of questions, listening to people within your own industry, having that lifelong curiosity about things, and not being afraid to challenge that status quo, right? To say, it doesn't have to be this way. What other ways can there be, and not just accepting things. So that's some of the stuff that's really helped me along in my career.
Yeah, great. Thank you. That's a really good answer. With that, I actually want to extend an invitation to all three of you to join our Slack channel group to be a mentor. So then, if you're okay with that, students may reach out to you later in time for some suggestions. I'll send that out tonight. And with that, I conclude my session. I hope this has been a good evening for the panelists and for the participants. Tomorrow, we're actually working on the sales and business modeling, and we'll have an investor panel following. It starts at 5:30. I'll probably come to the same evening. And again, thank you, Ben, Lyle, and Neil for tuning in, and thank you for all the good advice and willingness to share your experience with our students. And thank you for everyone participating. I hope everyone have a good evening.
Thanks.